to enrich just a few. You have a governance structure where some few will only benefit from certain specific types of transaction, aka borrowing and debt restructuring, all that stuff. That's all they know. When it comes to something as simple as debt, the UK, I mean, only this November, they actually recorded one of the lowest borrowing month on month. Why? Because they took steps to make sure they were reducing the amount of debt that they had. And this is a country that can arguably potentially afford it. They went through what you call a form of austerity budget. And so when this current UK government took over, Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister and then his Chancellor, they took over from Liz Truss and our countryman, Kwesi Kwarteng, who came in with some very runaway type economic policy similar to what Oforiatta has been doing for a while, and literally took the economy to a wall. And market access became challenging for the country. When these Rishi Sunak and the current Chancellor took over, one of the things they immediately did was starting to cut their coat according to their cloth. They immediately engaged in an austerity type budget, you know, making sure that you weren't spending frivolously. And it sent the right signal to the market. It meant that they were beginning to reduce the amount of deficit they were running. And the lower the deficit you run, the lower the borrowing you have to have. Because in simple terms, if you decide that you are going to raise 10 cedis of revenue, but spend 15 cedis in expenditure, that means you are spending an extra 5 cedis that you do not have, which is your deficit. How are you going to fund it? You are going to borrow from somebody. And that has many impacts on the economy. It's if you keep borrowing that extra 5 cedis every single year, in 10 years, you'll be owing 50 cedis. And the more you borrow, the higher your interest rate. And the more interest you have to pay together with servicing the capital, the lower the amount of money you have left to take care of the people. So when you are reducing your borrowing, you're actually doing the people a great good, and you are also stabilizing your own economy. That is one lesson that seems to have been lost to us. Of course, President Mahama did that very well. But in our case, we've borrowed so much that we actually bankrupted the Bank of Ghana. You have in this country, I mean, when they also went through COVID, and their COVID was worse than ours in Ghana. That's a fact. They got no money from IMF or anybody. We got billions from others. They had many more debts than we had. They spent a lot more than we did. But every single financial support by way of quantitative easing that the Bank of England engaged in, guess what? Government paid them back. The reverse is the case for us in Ghana, where we got our central bank to go and print as much as 80 billion, sunk itself into 60 billion debt, which is about $6 billion, double what we're asking for from IMF. And what did we do? We have taken it in, it's added to our debt. We're saying, write it off. Where is it going to go? So the denominator that distinguishes the progress in advanced countries from progress in developing countries, like ours particularly, is the quality of governance. I mean, Ghana is almost, even when you look at the quality of governance, let's even put the developed country aside and come back to Africa. Look all around us. Why is it that you have a situation where we are complaining that it is the environment in Ghana, it is COVID-19, it is Ukraine, Russia, that is leading us to these dire straits? But our neighbors are doing better all across the sub-Saharan continent. I mean, sub-Saharan Africa. Even war-torn countries are doing better than us. Food inflation in Ghana is one of the highest in the world, in all of Africa. You look at our own growth. For this year we are looking at, we are only going to end up recording something in the order of 1.2%. Nigeria is doing 3%. Cote d'Ivoire is doing 6.2%. Are they not in the same sub-Saharan continent or West Africa or ECOWAS as us? The global growth average is about 3%. So if you look at it, the difference here is governance. Everywhere you look at it, I mean, look at our budget, which we are going to talk about. Whilst other countries are cutting their coat according to their cloth, trying to reduce their deficit, what are we doing? We are piling on deficit upon deficit every single year. And each time you put your deficit in, your debt goes up. When your debt goes up, your interest goes up. And when your interest goes up, tax revenue that you should be using to pay for roads, for hospitals, you're rather using it to pay for debt servicing and interest. And what did you do with that debt? You can't point to a single tangible project that is able to, if you like, produce revenue that pays for it. So it's the quality of governance that distinguishes the fact that other countries have got Christmas and we have our Grinch in Ghana that has stolen Christmas. It's the difference in how we run our economy.
But and you have to go through the budgets from 2021, 2022, 2023. The government has always insisted that they are making cuts. They are, in fact, imposing some level of hardship on the Ghanaian. We've suffered the DDEP, among others, which are things that have affected the Ghanaian. What have they failed to do?
Now, who calls them? Nobody suffered a DDEP. They imposed a DDEP on us. There were alternatives to the DDEP, and we made it very clear. When you are in a deep hole, there is only one way out of it: climb the ladder. No matter which way you dig, whether you keep digging downwards or you dig sideways, you are still down in that pit. So now we were at a situation where we could not afford to pay our debts. So the most sensible thing we should have been doing was to say, you know what? First and foremost, let us stop borrowing. How do you stop the borrowing? You make sure you stop internal financing from the central bank. That should have been number one. You make sure that you try and run a balanced budget. Now, it is easy for Ghana because if you look at all the budgets that have given us the deficits and given us the debt that is landed us where we are, there has been no ambitious development-oriented program that is meant to pay for itself that we've used the money for. We have always gone for a 3 billion euro bond to come and add to budget consumption line and share it in the name of 1D1F, and nobody knows where the money is. So this government could have taken that bold step of saying, you know what, we remove all non-essential expenditure and try and run a balanced budget. Running a balanced budget means that you are not going to have a deficit, which means the need to borrow won't be there. So at least your debt stock will remain the same. Now, if your debt stock has remained the same and you are paying interest and servicing it every year, it means it will start coming down. That was the way out of the woods. What did they say? No, we would rather carry on running deficits. And what will we do? We will go ahead and go and what? Rob somebody else. In other words, rob the people. We've been running that DDEP. The first one, they said it was a success, 100. The second one, they ran again and they were taking money from people's pockets. We told them it will not work. They said it will work. Here we are. Even the IMF now agrees that it's not working. After giving us 600 million, we're supposed to get our second tranche of money a month and 10 days ago, 1st of November. Here we are today. We can't get it. Why? Because our debt is still unsustainable. We are running around asking others to take haircuts. Why should somebody take a haircut for you to go and finance your luxury? You still have these mysterious programs in there. So when they want to blame DDEP, the question you should ask is DDEP is because of the profligate borrowing. It's because of the huge amount of debt you saddled us with. So now, even as we are going through this DDEP, this year alone, our deficit, that is the total amount we are going to spend versus the amount we are going to collect, is going to be about 48.9 billion if you exclude arrears. If you include arrears, it goes to 55 billion. Use the exchange rate we are talking about on the dollar. You come back to about 5 billion. So we have a situation where we have told IMF, give us 3 billion and we will be able to become debt sustainable. Then we go and borrow an extra 5 billion. So if the 3 billion from IMF is going to make us debt sustainable, that means that the 3 billion is going to set us back by another net of 2 billion. That's for 2023. And this is the man who is so poor, who is so broke, they say they can't pay. What do? They are carrying on borrowing. 2024, they have programmed an overall balance deficit of 50 billion, that's $5 billion. And your overall balance is basically saying, what is the total revenue I'm going to collect? How much am I going to spend? What is the difference? If it's a private entity, you would have called it your loss. Right? We are projecting to collect 176 billion in 2024. And we are going to spend 226 billion. On what? And if you look at the budget, there is nothing compelling, no program on there that justifies this 226 billion, which we can look at in detail. But even the man who says, I cannot pay, is programming 50 billion, and then there is an arrears of 10 billion that's going to be carried over from 2023 into 2024. Add that to it, and we are going to in total of 61 billion. That's $6 billion. So for 2023, we are planning 2023-2024, we'll collect $3 billion from the IMF in loans. We are going to take $5 billion borrowing borrowing in 2023, $6 billion in 2024, add a total $11 billion. So, Senna, if they reduce our debt or give us $3 billion, assume it is even free money, and we will borrow an extra $11 billion, we are in a worse position by an extra $8 billion. How can you get out of this big debt ditch by continuing to dig? The most sensible thing is when a person is injured and is bleeding, the first thing you do is stop the bleeding. Once you stop the bleeding, then you can then go into a start of how do I then cure the person? No, we are in a situation where the man who is telling us GDP is making us struggle. He is still borrowing left, right, and center. And we haven't even added the $6 billion loss from Bank of Ghana. So you can see that the excuses that they are giving. If you tell us that GDP is the reason, then you should stop the root cause of GDP. If you tell us that the debt overhang is the reason, then you should stop borrowing. Start servicing your debt. A huge chunk of our debt since August we haven't paid yet. But these two budgets, they don't spare confidence. And that's why we're still struggling with the international community, the Paris Club and China, to get them to cut to take a haircut. Now, if you're a Chinese man, they discipline themselves financially. They've lent us money. We say we can't pay the amount we owe you. So cut some for us, 30% haircut. Then they see that we are going to borrow some extra $6 billion at the same time as we're saying that we cannot pay more. Why do you think they will give us free money knowing we are still going to go back to the old bad ways? That is one of the reasons we are going to find it difficult to get a deal from them.
So your suggesting is that we should have, is it cut or not borrow at all?
So you see, once you hold a balanced budget, it means you are not borrowing, because you have three types of budgets. And it's in simple terms. If you look at it, let me use it as, let's say in the domestic household. If you decide that you are going to collect revenue of say 10 cedis for the year in your whole house, and you are going to spend only 8 cedis, that means you are going to make a surplus of 2 cedis. So that is a surplus that will go into your bank account as wealth, as profit if you're a private business, as extra money you save for another day. It's that kind of surplus that other countries go through and lend to us, like the Chinese and the like. The other option is to say, okay, I'm going to borrow, I'm going to raise only 10 cedis in revenue, but I'm going to spend 15 cedis. It means you are spending more, so you are in a deficit. Now, where are you going to get the extra 5 cedis to be able to spend on what you don't have? You have to go and borrow, either from the bank or somewhere. And when you do that extra 5 cedis spending on what you don't have, that deficit adds to your debt stock. So even if you have zero debt, from that point when you are going to borrow an extra 5 cedis to add to your 10 cedis, to make sure you now have the 15 cedi to buy your jacuzzi, you now owe 5 cedi. If every year you keep borrowing 5 cedi to add to your 10 cedi to spend, you will keep increasing your debt stock. But if you choose to say, you know what, I'm earning 10 cedis, I'm going to spend only 10 cedis, it means you make no deficit, but you make no surplus. So you are not going to go and borrow from anybody because you spend exactly what you have. Effectively, you've cut your coat according to your cloth. So when we are in a debt situation, we can then decide that we are going to simply cut our coat according to our cloth. And so you say we spend exactly what we have. We will not program to spend more. So you set your revenue and say, how much am I going to raise? 176 billion. My expenditure will not exceed 176 billion, period. Which means for 2024, we wouldn't be borrowing at all. So if in 2024 we paid our interest or serviced our debt by 10 billion, it means our overall debt will come down by 10 billion. And what that will do is it will send a signal to those who owe us that no, these guys are now being responsible. They are no more borrowing anymore. Therefore, the little money they raise, they are able to use to start paying those that they owe. They owe me, therefore I know my money is coming. Listen, if I owe you money and I say I cannot pay, and then the next day you are waiting for me to come and pay, and then you hear that I've gone to Nancy to borrow again, are you going to be confident that your money will come in? No, because you know already I can't pay you. The little money I would have made, maybe you would have said, okay, try and squeeze and pay me. I'm going to now borrow from Nancy. So now you and Nancy will be competing for the same little money I did not have. So if I then come to you and say, oh, reduce my debt so that I'll be able to pay you, what confidence do you have? Because if you reduce that debt, I'm going to give some to Nancy and you may not even get in. So that is the situation we're talking about. This government should be thinking, and I'm confident that the next government, President Mahama has done it before. We will zero borrowing from Bank of Ghana and try and balance the budget. Now, if you were going to run a deficit, and let me caveat it here, because in economics, in Keynesian economics, you can sometimes take a deficit if the reason for the deficit is that you are borrowing to invest. That is what Gordon Brown and some economists have always called the golden rule. You get to a point where when it comes to Yenchendi, routine expenditure, recurring expenditure, the everyday buying, watching and things, that one you make sure if I don't have money, I'm not buying watching. I will drink my cocoa rather than go and buy a watching with Willie at borrowed cost. But when you come to invest, you want to build a travel gas plant, or you want to revamp TOR so that it's going to bring in money. You want to build Terminal 3, that is going to bring in money. You want to expand your port, that is going to expand the amount of business you do and therefore get taxes. You can borrow to invest there. That golden rule, the mind behind there is that if I enter a deficit today of $5 billion, but I use that to build, let's say, take the case of a travel gas plant. We borrowed $1.5 billion to build it. So if our deficit was $1.5 billion to build it, and as we speak, it is saving Ghana about $400 million in terms of gas imports every year. By incurring that debt today, next year we get 400 million. The debt has reduced to 1.1. The following year we get another 400 million. The debt has reduced to 700 million. The following year we get another 400 million. The debt has reduced to 300 million. By year 4, we have made 1.6 billion when we invested 1.5 billion. So by year 4, that project that you borrowed to invest in has now started giving you a profit of 100 million. And so after year 4, every year you are getting what? A profit on that plant, or you are making your returns on that plant is now positive by 400 million going. So the borrowing has paid for itself by the investment. When you have that kind of deficit, investors will say that is a man who knows where they are going. If you go and borrow to hold a Christmas party, right? At the end of the Christmas party, who's going to pay for it? But if you go and borrow to set up a business, you know that business is there. And therefore, it will be giving you money and in and out every day. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So borrowing itself is not bad. But in our situation, where we are, we should only be running a deficit. We should only be borrowing if we are going to be investing in infrastructure or in particular projects that are going to be bringing up some returns or making the public sector more efficient, like flyovers, like interchanges, like roads, like airports. I don't see any of those ambitious programs in 2023 budget or 2024 budget. So the question is, why are we running another 6 billion deficit in 2024? What did we get for the 5 billion we just ran in 2023? We got no Christmas. We've just blown 5 billion, borrowed it, and that's why you see that we are crowding out the private sector, as the previous caller said. And yet, we have no Christmas.
Now, a couple of things. One, because around this area, we have the Obeche-Bilamte interchange that's currently stalled, little work ongoing on it. There is also a flyover that goes over the Tema motorway from the Spinters Road connecting you to the East Legon area. There are many other roads in Accra. The Beach Road, the one to Nungwa has also stalled. All of them and many other projects are projects that you need money to be able to continue. Now, are you suggesting that when you look through the budget, you don't see the money that we are going to be borrowed being committed to completion of these projects?
Apart from it, when you look through the budget, they just put roads will be completed. I do not see specifics in this budget where they say we are voting this amount to complete Obeche-Bilamte interchange. Give another example. The famous Dumbah road, a road that is very dear to my heart, the place I grew up in. The contractor is the same contractor that built the Dubai, Circle Dubai. The same contractor that built phase 1 and phase 2 of the Tamale International Airport. That contractor packed out of sight almost a year ago. Because you see, These contractors were working based on bilateral loans. Those lenders, having realized that you stop servicing the debt, have all stopped. I mean, who's going to lend to a broke man? The man says he cannot pay. In fact, he has stopped paying other people, and you are still giving him your money. What are you expecting? These loans are not manna from heaven. Look at the budget. This is what I was saying, Senna. If Oforiatta was to say, you know what, we are in a very terrible situation, and we have been cutting people's savings through domestic debt exchange program, it's still not working. We have borrowed Bank of England into oblivion, destroyed it. It's still not working. Therefore, I don't want to borrow anymore. However, I have got some projects that are halfway. We need to complete them to take full advantage of their economic potential. Therefore, I will borrow, and I will ring-fence the borrowing, earmark it, targeted to those projects. So, okay, you need an extra $10 million to complete. That is ring-fence. We will carry on. Oh, Gifford Road, we are finishing it off with this amount. Borga Boku Road, this is the amount that is left. When you do that, even your investors and those who are lending to you will see a responsible person who is investing in projects that are going to bring back returns. But that is not what you have in the budget. This budget is not investment heavy, it's consumption heavy. Everything you go through it is the same sloganeering and calling it names. Ajankwa, I don't know, with all the budgets have had names. If this is an Ajankwa budget, I don't know what Uwo budget will look like. You know, but you are right, Senna. I do not see any concrete evidence of budgeting in this particular budget, both 2023 that was finishing and 2024. That guarantees us that those projects that have stalled because bilateral donors, contractors have walked offside because of lack of payment. I do not see anything that suggests that any of them will be back online anytime soon. Any of them will be completed anytime soon.
In fact, we've seen intense opposition from your party in Parliament. Already, they voted against the policy statement. They've indicated that they will vote against the appropriation when it comes before them. Is that a good move? Do you back that?
Absolutely. I back it 110%. And I want to salute Honorable Atuforsen, Dr. Atuforsen, Honorable Kwame Abuja, our own senior comrades, and the entire minority in Parliament, of course, supported by our gallant national executives, for putting up a very solid fight. So far, we've scored some successes. There is not a single Ghanaian that looks at this budget and thinks that it's a budget that is giving hope. And the minority has done exactly what a minority should be doing in a democracy, holding the government to account, holding the feet of government to this fire of scrutiny. You go through line by line by line. All this budget, you are having a situation, this is where we are even talking about stealing Christmas the more. Oforiatta is planning to raid people's pockets and put a 20% tax on our petition. The little that when we have nothing to have fun with, we go and take small quota just to sit under the palm tree and also at least thank God and say, even if we cannot be joyful when we are sober, then at least let us be joyful when we are not sober a bit. The man says he'll take 20% of it. You look at every single thing, he's taking more and more. After DDDP, more taxation. Now, that taxation is killing the economy, and we've talked about this. And if you are taxing to invest, it makes sense. You are taxing, and on top of that tax, you are going to go and borrow some more. So he's taking from our pockets, he's going to borrow in our name, in other words, take our future taxes as well. What are we getting for it? Nothing. So I think the minority has done the right thing. Already, the LI on the import restrictions, going back to those import license days, where the trade minister thought he could make himself a king somewhere and engage in grand corruption, that has been shut down, thanks to the gallant work of the minority. And the minority did a good job at even reminding the IMF that under your protocol, this kind of dubious import license thing cannot happen. And the IMF was forced to cough out and force government to back down. I think that now is not the time for Oforiatta to be going into those taxes that he has levied on us through that LI that is coming. And the minority should continue to make sure they pour more cold water on that LI, make sure no more taxes come in. Because the service sector that the same government is touting as, if you like, the main spine of our economy is being taxed to death. On the one hand, the little they make, they are being taxed from baller tax to every single tax you can get. On the other hand, you have taxes on consumers that is reducing their capacity to patronize the services that will grow the economy. And to make it worse, government is now mopping up all lending capacity in the economy through internal lending because they've been shut out by the international market. So what are they doing? They're simply going in on treasury bills at rates 30% and plus. 91-day treasury bill, 182 treasury bills, 1-year treasury bills. They are mopping up every little bit of capacity or liquidity left in the system that private sector would have tapped into. And they are taking that, and what are they doing with it? Wasting it on frivolous government projects, buying cars and chilling at the expense of Ghanaians. So the minority is doing the right thing, and the minority should stay and carry on voting down this budget, even at appropriation stage, so that Ghanaians will know that the NDC is about Ghana. It is not about enriching personal pockets or piling monies under the beds of government appointees or politics of government appointees. No. Look at the amount of money that is being invested in primaries. The main election hasn't come yet. We saw Kumawu, we saw Asen North, we saw the MPP primaries. Look at the amount of money that is going in there. That is where all these deficits that are being run, all this mismanaged economy, the cash coming out of it, they are stuffing them all into their pockets. And the minority should continue with that gallant task of making sure that we hold this party, this outgoing NPP government to account and stop this reckless budget from being implemented.
But is that not dangerous? Because at this point in time, we already have difficulties with the international market. A budget being openly opposed in Parliament sends out further signals, weakens investor confidence in the country. Is that a good idea at this time for a country that's already down?
On the contrary, and this is an example, many countries over, recent example, and I started with that in the UK. When Kwesi Kwarteng brought his budget, that budget, it riles the markets. It was a budget similar to this that was going to pile a lot of debt, and there was no clear-cut view on what returns were going to be there. The market reacted negatively. The cost of borrowing went through the roof for the UK government. As soon as Liz Truss was out and Rishi Sunak came in with the new Chancellor, they cut that budget out and brought in a more sensible budget that sought to cut the code according to their cloth. That immediately triggered investor confidence. They said, these are people that know what they are doing. If you watch the markets, Oforiasa's budget did not move the market one single bit. They were not convinced, so they stayed where they are. They have no market access, no more borrowing, lending to us. And in fact, the throwing out of that airline, it sent a positive signal to the market. Because the moment you put that in, it was going to stall trade. And when trade comes down, your tax take will come down. And when your tax take comes down, your revenue will come down. And when your revenue comes down and your expenditure still stays up, your deficit situation and your debt situation was going to get worse. So I think the position that the minority is taking is actually injecting financial prudence into the spine of these MPP reckless economic managers, if you can call them that. And the investors are actually looking and they are excited about it. Now, if what the NDC in Parliament is doing was going to create jitters among investors, you would have seen the market signaling. But if you watch the market signal, they are all watching quietly because the government is doing the wrong thing. And because of this soft diplomatic language, they don't always want to come out and say it. But when the wrong thing is being corrected, see, the market is watching with bated breath on whether we can stop the reckless taxation, whether we can cut the budget. This budget that we don't need to run it. There's nothing convincing in this budget that justifies a 6 billion borrowing to implement it. What is there? Because already we are borrowing to pay interest. That's the reality. Because if you take out interest payment is 55 billion. We are going to run a base overall balance of 50 billion deficit. So basically, we have to borrow more to be able, we have to borrow an extra 5.9 billion to be able to pay our debt. And that's why when you look at the primary balance, you are then looking at when you adjust for interest, you are come to 5.9. So we have to even borrow to pay on our borrowing. That means something has to give. We should cut out so that we didn't have to borrow the extra 5.9 billion. So the minority is on the right track. The minority should insist that they should go back and cut frivolous expenditure. We need fiscal consolidation now. In other words, we need to cut down on wasteful expenditure. That is what this country needs. So that at the very least, we are not borrowing an extra peso in 2024. Anything short of that, the minority should continue pushing and crusading against it. If the NPP MPs want to continue to visit this kind of economic recklessness and pain on Ghanaians, let them carry on. The good people of Ghana can see. People are struggling, and what are you doing? You're going to waste $400 million in a massive pit that was meant to scam God. You've got all these projects, so-called 1D, 1F, you can't find anywhere, and yet you are continuing to borrow. When we all agree that the problem, the elephant in the room in this case, is borrowing. So the minority is doing the right job, and we salute them, and they should carry on. They have our undying support on this.
But, Chairman, the argument has always been reduce imports, increase exports, or reduce import, make whatever you're producing competitive. Katie Hammond has insisted that that's what they intend to achieve with the bill. Is that not good?
Without that bill, rice production under President Mahama went through the roof because you had a conscious effort. Companies like the Tamana Rice Factory in Bawumia's Northeast region started operations in 2011. It was through deliberate government support, encouragement, and creating an environment that encouraged them to go into production. They were producing local rice. They were supplying to the armed forces, supplying to various schools, supplying to buffer stock. As we speak now, that company is folding up. They have a total workforce of 250 staff. They've cut it down to 105. And even that 105, they only come in when there is work. Because they have a lot of rice there, they cannot sell. In their warehouses in Kumasi, in their warehouses in Tema, even in their factory in Nasia, in Baumia's own Northeast region, not far from Walwale. Why? Because the buffer stock company owes them millions of cedis and it's not paying. They only paid them 53,000 Ghana the other day. Somebody who owes you 1 million comes to pay 53,000 Ghana. Your rice is there. Ghanaians can't buy because excessive taxes on local production, removal of inputs, agriculture support inputs, which means the cost of production has gone up, and therefore the price of the rice is higher even than imported rice. President Mahama put a stop to the small-scale importation of rice. That was a boost to companies like that. Now those companies are crippled. We did not do any import, the kind of import restrictions they are trying to put in. We simply said, if you are a small-scale rice importer, those that come through the borders, appliqué type importers, we stopped that. That in itself is one of the things that you can't control. But by doing that, and then actively giving free fertilizer, subsidized fertilizer, our farmers were able to produce at a lower cost, which meant that the input into the factory was lower, and therefore their output in terms of rice, the price was lower. Ghanaians could patronize it. You have reversed all of that. With your planting for food and jobs, that has made agriculture worse. Therefore, the cost of production in Ghana is high. It is not the fault of import that the cost of production in Ghana is high. So even if you ban those imports and the cost of production in Ghana is still high, did we go or did we come? And they were not talking of banning. What he was talking about is that he will sit in his office. Every Lebanese importer will come to him and give him bribe before he will release a license to them. That is not the way you grow an economy like this. He should go back to the blueprint President Mahama used to bring up the many rice factories, which they came and deceptively slapped 1D, 1F on. This particular factory I'm talking about, this Tamana one, and many others. A simple common sense approach. We all agree that import substitution should be the order of the day. But you don't do that at the expense of Ghanaians. Because if that had gone through, and they came and paid him $100 million bribe to get a license to import rice, they are going to slap that $100 million on that rice. The price of that rice will go up, and you and I will end up paying more. Inflation will go through the roof again, and we are back to square one. And that's why the minority opposed it. And even the IMF saw that that is not the kind of policy that you run. Support your farmers, support your local industries, like President Mahama supported the pharmaceutical sector to export to Liberia, Gambia, Sierra Leone. That is how you stabilize the city. Support your local champions. Don't cut imposed cost on importation of essential goods, sugar, rice, which means Ghanaians will suffer higher costs just because you want to line your own pockets. This is taking us to the 70s under Champong, where you had to go and get import licenses and that kind of stuff. We have liberalized the economy. So why on earth would a party, a so-called liberal party like the NPP, go back to those kind of communist type tactics? It defies sense, Senna.
So for Chairman Conrad, more opposition?
Oh, absolutely. More fire, more opposition. we must stop this budget in its tracks. They should cut it down until the coat is cut according to the cloth. No reckless borrowing, prudent financial management. That's it. The opposition, the minority should carry on. No retreat, no surrender on this budget. We must make sure that the government goes back and thinks, cuts frivolous expenditure, and comes back to the people of Ghana to say, we have listened, we will not borrow anymore because we have nothing transformative that we are going to use that borrowing for. Therefore, we will keep your money in your pockets. No more borrowing, no more tax increases. Keep what you have and do best with it as you deem fit. That is what we want for this economy. When they find something transformative, not that blue economy nonsense or digitization thing that they are talking about, something like 24 hours. I will support you borrowing to stimulate the economy through a 24-hour economy by tripling employment through a 3-hour shift, so that the single shift we currently have, we triple it, meaning in simple terms, the employment you currently have, you can triple it to reduce the 14% unemployment rate we are talking about. Make sure that all our brothers that are playing Ludo and Uwari under the tree can go and do the afternoon shift or the night shift to make money. Make sure our economy runs 24 hours to provide the essential services, whether they are government or private services that are needed, and thereby boosting the economy with the potential to doubling the value of our economy. We can't continue sleeping 16 hours and working only 8 hours in the 24 hours. If you borrow to invest in that kind of economy, then I will salute you. But all you see in that budget was an intention for some nighttime economy with a task force. Not a first one has been allocated to it. If Oforiatta had said, I'm going to boost nighttime economy with $20 million, I will support you. Not set up a task force to go and look at nighttime economy for Christmas period. After Christmas, what do you do? We go back to 8-16. No, we can't work 8 hours, sleep 16 hours. We want 24/7, 247. That's the way out of these rules. And that's what we should be investing in.
And thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, I've run out of time. There's a lot more to talk about, including the 24-hour economy and your work as chairperson of the NDC UK Ireland. You have a job to do. Many of the people have been put in positions within the National Democratic Congress. I guess the target is win power for NDC in 2024.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all working flat out to deliver that. The good people of Ghana are looking for us to rescue them from these very people who are, in fact, the NPP are desperately begging to be rescued from themselves. And the great NDC is doing all we can to rescue the NPP from themselves so that they can go and rest, because they've run out of steam. There are no more tires left on their vehicle. They're just running on the wheel now. And they're just visiting suffering on Ghanaians. That doesn't need to happen. And inshallah, NDC will be back. In 12 months from now, we will be celebrating the great comeback of Ghana, not just NDC, but getting back to winning ways. So thank you very much for having me, and a very good morning and a blessed week to your cherished listeners and your gallant heroes in the studio.
Chairman, thank you very much for speaking to us.
You're welcome, my boss.
Conrad Dumbah is chairman of NDC UK Ireland, joining us via Zoom for a conversation this morning. There will be more. We'll have further conversations with him as we go closer into the 2024 elections. La.
We are going to episode 2B. Now, so no, we try, and fa. I obekono. Na nimun I won a passport no so no asesa. Omo hwe nim din si sister. Na so no de ogina o manim no brother. Na wadane oba. Obu onso adwuma wo ye no. Wa pre adwuma ne mfa. Oye oton kokokura no aboka. Piota no beton kura no aboka. Ne bibia ya basa. Ana odie no eyaware mu nsem. Oh. Enie. Furniture Asumge Spiritual and Herbal Center. Say Ghana ha na wo. Ana samonone na wo. Ofre Prophet Blessed Emmanuel Ejea. Oda Asumge Herbal and Spiritual Center no a. Na send direction or the bebo papa. Prophet Blessed Emmanuel Ejea. Obebo pa. Ohwe Prof ewo La Paz Tabura number 4. Alaji kwani so na prof wowo but obetimi any prof edim komo ewo ahomatrufo so 0244